a warning from Israeli Enron. They found a lot of mistakes, they called it mistakes. The real estate companies went to the stock market and they sold shares for 20 billion shekels and 140 billion shekel debenture because the banks are not giving them any more money. Those who are selling us our pensions, they went and bought this money. We have 85,000 unsold apartments. This narrative was built by journalists, and it was the biggest fraud and lie that took place for almost 12 years. Compare the Israeli real estate market to Madoff Ponzi scheme. It's the same. The market goes always up. The Fed, your money will always blah, 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 blah. The situation today is even worse because those kids who bought in the 10, 90, 20, 80 sales, now they're supposed to bring the money. So they're canceling their contracts.
This is so typical to a bubble behavior, so typical to a Ponzi scheme. And now they're canceling these contracts because they don't have enough money or to pay these 10% or to complete the deal because the banks are not giving them their loan.
The builder comes to the bank and he tells them, listen, I need more money. The bank is telling him, whoa, 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 hold your horses, mister. Go sell the apartment that you have on the shelves first and then come and get more money. It's like a Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme needs money to come inside all the time. And when the money stops coming, the Ponzi scheme is collapsing. So this is it. There are 200,000 condos empty. This minute in Israel, what we know is that the builders have today 85,000 condos that no one is buying. And more than 55% of them are in the center of Israel, Tel Aviv, Yafo. Okay, it's simple. If you want to know what will happen, you got to look.
At Tribe Journal, we tell the untold. You can find more great content like this at tribejournal.org. Thanks for being with us.
Welcome to the Tribecast. We have a very special guest today, as always, Mr. Haim Etkin. You might find him on Spotify under Haim Etkin from the AI that does his podcast based on his blog post, which is that could be a whole discussion unto its own. But today we're going to focus on the new letter that went out to the Israel Security Agency that is security not in the kinetic war security, but the security in the financial realm. And we're going to be hearing from Haim and hopefully deep diving and hear more about the procedures of how the building tenders get made, how the financing works behind the scenes between the banks, the relationship between the banks and the builders, and how that relates to the market price versus the value of property today. So, Haim, tell us a little bit about this new letter that went out just last week.
This new letter is, I called it a warning from Enron, the Israeli Enron that have been developed in the last 12 years, meaning that this letter tells the constructing and the real estate companies to be very, very correct in the reports. Well, those who hear us now say, why? They weren't very correct in their reports. So the answer is no, they found a lot of mistakes. They called it mistakes. I don't call it mistakes, but let's stick to let's stick to the words that they used. They used it and they said that they have found critical mistakes or major mistakes in their reports, such as including VAT in their valuation properties. This is not a small mistake when you speak about businesses. No one includes VAT. It's 18% today. This is pumping the valuation. As simple as that. So this is not a mistake or an innocent mistake. The problem is that they have the real estate companies went to the stock market and they sold shares for 20 billion shekels, and they sold 140 billion shekel debenture, which means that more than 20 companies don't have enough money, so they went to the finance market to collect money because the banks are not giving them any more money.
Let's describe just for because we have a very wide variety of listeners uh, in our community, our online community. Some are well versed in finance, and others are a little bit the novice. Um, what is a debenture? I'm just going to read the dictionary definition here. A debenture is an unsecured loan. An unsecured loan certificate issued by a company that is backed by credit rather than specified assets. So basically, it's an unsecured loan. Is that what you wanted to say?
Yeah, it's a paper that the company is selling, and they're telling you, listen, I'll give you for this paper 6% interest only when you'll come to me 8 years from today. Okay, hold this paper, and you'll have 8%, 6% a year, and 8 years from today, knock at my door, and I'll take this paper back and I'll give you the money. It's a loan. Okay, it's a loan.
But the key here is that it's not secured by a property. So whereas a mortgage, a bank would issue a loan for a house, and the house is basically the collateral, so to speak, for the loan and for the loan. And if the person defaults on the loan, then the bank could take the house. Here, there is nothing securing the loan at this 6 or whatever percent that they made the loan for.
You described it quite right, and the history of Israel is full with those fools who bought these papers. And when they came to the companies after 5 3, the company says, "Oh, gee, honey, I'm so sorry. I'm out of money." So this is
So
the
give us some
situation.
context here, just to bring it back, because we had a little bit of pause looking up a few words in Hebrew. Um, who's making a loan to who when we're talking about these unsecured loans?
The real estate company, the
So
contractor,
the builder or the developer, or who are we talking about specifically?
all of them, all of the above, they need money, and the bank told them, "Listen, we cannot give you any more money." So they went to the stock market and they sold stocks for 20 billion shekels, and 140 billion shekels. They sold these papers that we call the ventures.
Okay,
Okay,
so this isn't your local builder, or this isn't your local nadlan, this isn't your shiputzim guy. This is essentially a large corporation that's operating in probably no less than what, 500 million a year. Talking
very
about
big.
giant corporations that essentially went to the publicly traded stocks and issued debt.
Because the banks stopped giving them money because they have so many open sites, building sites on
So
stock.
1 second, did they go to the market and essentially offer loans to the public, or did they sell shares of their own corporation on the public traded market?
They did both. Once they sell shares of their own companies, that's 20 billion shekels. Most of the buyers, by the way, were stabilized, those who owe, those who are selling us our pensions. They went and bought this money because money knows to go to money and to keep, their friends. They're drinking coffee together. They know each other. So the insurance companies who who managing our pensions, they bought these stocks. I call them, kids with thighs. That's
And so from their perspective, it's basically a low risk investment because real estate, quote unquote, always goes up. Is that right?
no, yes, but the real reason is because these are kids with thighs that have a car, for lunch, and they understand nothing concerning real estate. And the most important thing is that their boss is the friend of the bank's boss. It's a, it's a, it's a, it's a close,
Tight knit
so
community, but a bit of a tight knit community, a small group of influential financiers. And is that,
you want to hear my expression or you don't want to hear my expression?
well, if it has 4 letters, Chaim, then I think we'll pass. But if not, then
It doesn't have 4 letters, but it's like forget it, forget it.
okay, forgotten.
So the real estate situation is like this: we have 85,000 unsold apartments that no one needs because the supply is higher than the demand. By the way,
And that's as of January 2025.
well, no, never,
Sorry, January 2026.
never in Israel was a situation of lack of apartments. This narrative was built by journalists, and it was the biggest fraud and lie that took place for almost 12 years, since 2012. And I'm shouting from 2012. There is no,
Chaim, let's talk about that a little bit before we go further down the road of these unsecured loans, because and just to give some context, because there are a lot of people in America that watch this that are maybe interested in investing in Israeli real estate, maybe securing a home for themselves. And everyone hears about the market constantly going up. Everyone hears about Israeli real estate never goes down; it always goes up. And a lot of that is due to a shortage of housing units on the market. And so what you're saying now is that there's never been a housing shortage since 2012, which is a very new idea because people literally ran on these shortages. They ran for Knesset on these shortages to try and solve the housing crisis. And housing crisis, we had early 2000s, we had tent cities in Tel Aviv, right? And sorry, mid 2010, what was it? With the whole protests in tent cities. So tell us a little bit about this. If you're saying, I always thought there was a shortage of 100,000 units aggregated over decades. You're telling us that since 2012 that was solved and we're actually in a surplus. So tell us a little bit about that.
well, because your audience is Americans, I think that the best explanation that I can give them is to compare the Israeli real estate market to Madoff Ponzi scheme. It's the same. The market goes always up. They said your money will always blah 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 blah. What happened in the Israeli real estate market is a typical Ponzi scheme. And by the way, the Israeli banks did their first Ponzi scheme was at the 80s with the bank stocks. And if someone wants to learn from the history, go and search on the web what happened to the bank stocks that they blew up until they collapsed. The banks collapsed. And they did exactly this in the real estate market. And you couldn't even, no voice could have been heard because you can never beat the money, by the way. Money always wins. You can see it all over, even in courtroom. You can, murderers are being went free because they could buy a good lawyer. Okay. So this is the reason this Ponzi scheme that is running in Israel since 2012. 2012 was the exact point that I have started to shout, listen, this is a bubble. And this bubble became today to a mega bubble. The prices in Israel today are double than the value. The value you check with a positive yield. Today, you go to the bank, you take money in 5 or 6% rate, and you buy a property that you get 2.5% yield. Meaning, the minute you bought a property, you lost money. 2025 is the year that no one is buying properties. The companies we have today on the shelf 85,000 apartment condos for sale, and a similar number is being built right now. And there is no shortcut. The supply is for years from today, and the prices are so high, no one can afford it. No family can afford buying a condo in Israel.
Okay, good.
You want
Let
a house in Florida? I'm traveling in Zillow every evening to a house in Florida, $400,000. A house, not a condo. A house. A condo, by the way, is 120 in Florida. I'm speaking 150. Okay, listen, you cannot buy a garage in this price in Israel. It's so let's put it.
Chaim, I hate to interrupt you. I just want to make sure we're unpacking some of this as we go. Um, I think you ran through a stop sign for at least for my audience. You're talking a high level and you're moving pretty fast here. Let me just slow you down. Because we have to explain what you mean by the difference in the yield. Um, when you think of price, you think one thing, and the audience might be thinking of sales price, and that might be an agreement. But when you think of value, that distinction needs to be fleshed out a little bit. So let's unpack what you believe the difference between price, sales price, and value, which is based on the return on investment on an annual basis.
So first of all, it's not what I believe in. Okay, that's the Bible. Okay,
As the appraiser that you are, that's the terminology in the
why real estate is so loved and so sexy, and it's right. Why does people love real estate? And they love it, and it's true. You should love real estate. You should invest in real estate. Why? Because you go to the bank and you take a loan for 5%, and then you go, either you can build or you can buy a property, rent it to someone, and you will get 7% yield, meaning you're making 2% yield a year. And of course, it is very reasonable to assume that the value of the property is climbing 2 or 3% a year. This is the only reason that people love real estate. You're making money out of money. You're taking money from the bank. You're paying them back 1,000 a month, and you're getting rent for 1,300 a month. This is the whole.
plus equity in the property as you pay your loan down, and an increase in the original sales price to the whenever you might sell it down the road.
It's reasonable to assume, yeah, it's a very good defensive against inflation, real estate. So these two benefits, we as Jews learn very fast. And this is why all of us, especially Jews, by the way, we love real estate. This is what we do the best. We know how to make from 1 shekel 3, and you can do it, but through real estate. You go to the bank, you take it 5%, you rent it for 7%, and this is it. You made it. You made it. But the situation today is, as I said, you go to the bank, you take it for 5%, and you rent it, and you get 2.5, meaning the moment you bought the real estate, the assets, you're losing money because you have a negative yield. A negative yield means bubble. And when the yield is half from the interest that you got from the bank, half, it means mega bubble. The prices today are double than the value, the economic value. This is the whole story. And this is why people love real estate. Invest in real estate, but make it smart. Make sure that the rent is covering plus the money that you took from as a loan, or if you took from your own money, that it's the yield is higher than alternative investment, such as I don't know what. Okay, but the situation today, listen, there is no reasonable explanation.
Right. So I just want to let's just flesh this out a little bit to make sure we're clear. The what you're describing in percentages can change. For example, if I decide to put I think in Israel there's no FHA loan. There's no first home buyer loan where you would get a 2.5 or 5% loan, down payment for a mortgage like there is in the United States. Here, most of the mortgage brokers are talking 25% on average. That's a 25% down payment for a 75% loan. But if you put 50% loan down payment on for a 50% loan, you might actually get more rent income than your mortgage payment. But there's another 25% that you could have, or 50% that you could have put into the market and gone and say for the S&P, 25% return on investment in 2025. So all these things are cost benefits, and we have to make those analyses. But I think what you're saying is that if the average down payment is say 25%, and we exclude that as like the benchmark for making up for the equity gain each year and the increase in the sale price down the road. But what you're saying is that the average loan and mortgage payment is not covered by the rental income for investors. Correct?
Yeah, yes, exactly. And let me put it in other words. You can rent a house that the owner is paying 20,000 20K shekels loan to the bank, and you can rent it for 10K a month. You understand the numbers? Meaning, why should you buy such a house? It's it's every apartment in Herzliya, in Tel Aviv, in Holon, in Bat Yam, in Rishon LeZion, in Petah Tikva, in Ramat Gan. It's the same. If you rent this house, you pay half than what the owner is losing or paying to the bank. So this is why I'm saying the moment you bought the property, you lost money. And
Absolutely. I see that where we are now, that the rental payment is significantly less. Like in other words, just to break this down for people in America today, if you were to spend $3,000 on a 3 or 4 bedroom in Boston or New York, whatever it is, if you were to spend $3,000, that house would not be worth more than, let's say, or that apartment wouldn't be worth more than like $1 million. But here, for the same rental price, it might be at 1.6, 1 point. I mean, it's a huge gap between what the value you get as a renter compared to what you would have to pay on your mortgage. If the same amount of rent, said another way, the same amount of rent you pay monthly in Israel is when you look at it from a mortgage perspective, it would be like putting 50% down payment to make sure that the mortgage would be.
yield, yield, yield. That's the name of the game. Positive yield at least 1.5 or 2% higher than the alternative investment or than the payments that you're paying to the bank. Okay, this is the whole game.
So explain this,
And
because if you're saying basically that there's a price difference on sale price versus the value estimation from an appraiser's perspective. But then if the sales price continuously goes up every year, and the rent maybe at a slower pace, let's say, eventually the person would be able to sell that property and still make a profit that would then help the yield, the calculus behind the yield being a positive investment.
Well, let's put it this way. Did you try to sell an apartment in the last 6, 7 months in Israel? You won't succeed because no one is buying. This is one of the reasons that the new apartments that the builders are stuck with so many apartments, and the second hand are stuck too because they're saying, okay, so I'll wait a little bit and I won't sell it today. And if you don't have to sell, maybe it's a good decision to wait. But if you must sell because you bought a new house, a new condo, and you need the money, there are no houses in Israel, only, in special. When we say condo apartments, that's the most common, typical assets in Israel. But if you bought a new condo and you need the money, first of all, you must pay the loans. And second, after 24 months, you will have to pay 8% tax because you're holding two houses, two condos. Okay? So you have 24 months to sell your old condo if you bought a new one. It's a catch 21, how do you call it? It's not so simple. And the situation today is even worse because those kids who bought in the 10, 90, 20, 80 uh, 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 sales of the builders, now they're supposed to bring the money. So they're canceling their contracts. This is a huge chaos mess. Isn't a word in the Hebrew language, English language, that will describe the chaos that is going to happen. Those kids, someone told them, listen, go to Afakim, buy a new condo, sign on a contract 10, 20, 90, meaning pay 10% now and 90% in 4 years from today when the condo is going to be ready. Those kids doesn't even have these 10% down payment. So some of them, by the way, didn't pay. I don't know. People doesn't know that. Some of them didn't even pay. The builder told them sign here, 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 and here too. And they signed. And now they're canceling because someone told them buy these condos 4 years from today, 10% is going to increase 10% a year. So you'll do a beautiful flip. This is so typical to a bubble behavior, so typical to a Ponzi scheme plan. And now they're canceling these contracts because they don't have enough money or to pay this 10% or to complete the deal because the banks are not giving them their loan. This is a huge, huge. To sum it all, the Israeli real estate bubble is blowing up. These moments that we're speaking, and the market is collapsing into itself.
That was a good overview of one of the many factors as to why you believe that we're in a real estate bubble, primarily because there's a tremendous amount of inventory that isn't getting sold, and also the fact that the discrepancy between the price, the sales price, and the value that of rental value and other factors that appraisers like yourself will factor in to determine what the value is. There's a huge gap between sale price and what the assessed value is. And this is a huge this is a rabbit hole that we could go down and unpack all. It's like Pandora's box, and who knows what will come out because there's so many factors that make up the bubble that we're in right now. But before we go there, and I do want to unpack that, I want to hear from you, like, all of that, everything. I want to hear it all, like why all these factors. But before we do that, let's go back to why the banks stopped lending now, right? We spoke about the play to go to the securities market and that's how these companies are raising money to continue to build. But let's, before we get there, tell us, why did the banks stop lending?
Well, I got to be honest, I don't know the exact answer to this, but I can assume when a builder comes to the bank and he tells them, listen, I need more money, the bank is telling him, whoa, 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 hold your horses, mister. Go sell the apartment that you have on the shelves first and then come and get more money. This is why. And second, they must bring guarantees, warranties to this more money that they're asking. So the best and the short way to do it is go to the insurance company that is running our pensions and tell them, listen, I get 10% from my company, from my stock, okay? And the insurance companies are buying 10, 15%, and they're paying millions, hundreds of millions for these stocks that they doesn't worth this amount of money because the valuation, as we started our conversation, is done with a lot of mistakes. And then they sell these papers to the public. Buy these papers for 6%, 7%, and meet me in 7 years, and then I'll buy the paper back, 7% a year. So the lack of money, they don't have money because they're not selling condos. This is as simple as that. And a lot of builders are opening new sites. So the banks, I don't know why they're doing it, why they're not stopping. Well, actually, I do know why they're not stopping, because if they will stop, it's like a Fondy scheme. A Fondy scheme needs money to come inside all the time. And when the money stops coming, the Fondy scheme is collapsing. So this is it. 85 condos on the shelf. Similar number is being built just now. And the market is full. The supply is higher than the demand. It was always this way, by the way. But the journalists, I don't call them journalists, they built a narrative of shortage. It pays all of them. So this narrative was built, and that was a huge, huge, huge lie. Just a week ago, the Lamas, how do you say, לשכה המרכזית לסטטיסטיקה. You know how you say it in English? הלשכה המרכזית לסטטיסטיקה. They published.
Is
They
that like
published.
is that a public? Is that like a state agency
Yes,
that
yes, yes,
tracks the
yes, yes. It's
data,
the
statistical data of? Is it demographics or is
absolutely.
it financial statistical data? What is it?
No, 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 no. The statistic.
Demographics.
Yeah, exactly. They published that in Israel we have more than three more than 3 million condos, and we have only 2.9 families. Okay, it's not exactly, the expression is not exactly family, meaning there are much more apartments than families or who uses them.
Okay, now I get it. 2.9 million households. Go ahead.
Exactly. And the number of condos is 3.05.
That's available condos, or that is
Yes, yes, available condos.
okay. So there's 150,000 units that are currently not
Yeah,
being lived
yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah. And if you want to add something to that, there are 200,000 condos empty this minute in Israel for a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons. Some of them are abroad, some of them are in repairs, some of them, no one knows the
War or evacuation areas and.
whatever,
Well, let me
yeah.
ask you this
So,
though, before you move on from that. That's a good segue into a point that I was thinking while you were speaking before, is that these vacancies, it's easy to say in Israel, there are 150,000 units that are available today that are not being rented or bought. But we have to look at it from where they are being built, right? In other words, if those available units are all along the northern border and all along the southern border, and you live in Shomron, that's one thing, because then you could essentially have a shortage in the central region by Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and in
No,
between.
this is another, excuse me, lie that
Good. Let's hear about it. Tell us what you think about that.
I don't think there are data. Okay, 85 condos that are the inventory of the builders. Half of it is in Tel Aviv. Half of the 85 condos that are not being sold are in Tel Aviv. And I'm telling
The
you,
85,000 condos.
50% from this is in Tel Aviv.
Wow. Wow.
More than 55.
Now that's okay. Hold on, because you're throwing a lot of numbers. I just want to bring it down and make sure we don't get lost in the woods here. Basically, you're saying there's 85,000 available new units, finished, ready to be sold for the first time units, ready to be lived in for the first time, maybe rented, maybe sold. And then there is another 75 or so thousand that are old units that are staying empty. Is that correct? Am I getting those numbers right?
Well, let's put it this way. First of all, no one really knows the number. No one made the comparison between these two databases. But what we know is that the builders have today 85,000 condos that no one is buying, and more than 55% of them, meaning something like 50,000, are in the center of Israel. Tel Aviv, Yafo, Bat
Beit
Yam,
Shemesh.
Hulon. No, Bet Shemesh is out of it. Bet Shemesh is not. It's not called of. Don't
Center.
feel so proud because Bet Shemesh is
Not in the center.
not in the center.
It's in the middle of nowhere. It's just out of the center.
Yeah. So again, I'm telling you again. One of the narrative, by the way, that was built in these 13 years of pumping and blowing up the bubble is that people said that when I said there is no shortage of apartment, people answered me, yes, but they're building in places that no one wants to go to live in. Exactly as you said. Listen, the narrative is so rooted in people's there. You cannot convince them. I'm telling you. I'm dead tired of feeling like Don Quixote. No one listened to me, by the way. No one listened to me.
I'm listening to you,
I,
Chaim.
yeah. And my wife, by the way, my wife too is not listening to me. By the way, it's like Harry Markopoulos. You know who he is? Harry Markopoulos?
Is it an
Harry,
investment?
no, Harry Markopoulos was the one who said Madoff is a Fonzi scheme. He said
The whistleblower.
yeah, he said it for years. He said it for years. And when it blew up, he said, I knew it. So each and every one of you, if you want to know what's happening in the real estate market in Israel, go and see the Madoff film. The series have 4 chapters, and you'll know who Harry Markopoulos is. And of course, Enron, how you blow up the market of the value of the contractors' stock. And of course, The Big Short. The Big Short is a classical when the dancer. There is a very nice scene in this film, The Big Short, when the dancer told the guy there, I forgot his name. She told him, "Listen, this is what I'm doing with all my houses." And he said, "All your houses? How many houses did you buy?" And she said, "5." And he said, "Oh my God, this is a bubble." Okay. And this is exactly what happened in Israel. Every kid in Israel bought an apartment, and every investor bought 5, 10, 15, 20. I have clients with 30 condos. 30 condos. It's like, you collect cars. They collect condos. it's and by the way, one of the reasons that the rent is pushing up all the time is the the investor right, trying to get a positive yield, but they can't. Still, there is a gap between what they're paying to the bank and what they're getting from rent. But this is exactly the reason that the rent is all the time pushing up. Every year, the owner tells the renter, "Listen, I have expenses, 500 shekels more."
Is that a factor of the variable rate?
Again, I'm not sure I understood.
Is that a fact? Why, if I did a 30-year fixed rate, then why would my expenses go up?
First of all, there isn't such a mortgage in Israel. You won't find a mortgage that is fixed rate.
So
There
what
isn't
you're
such
saying
a
is another risk factor that I don't know what the percentage would be, but a large percentage, a large majority of the financing for mortgages are basically 5-year variables or 10-year variables or 30-year variables. Also 30 years or no?
yeah. Also, I'm not so familiar with the mortgage issues, but then maybe you should talk to someone who
Okay, so
it's
we'll talk to
business.
someone else about it. Bring it back to the banks deciding that they're not going to loan to the builders anymore. Remember, you said we started by saying we started with the Enron case where the banks stopped lending to the builders, and the builders had to put some of their equity onto the publicly traded markets in order to raise capital to continue the
What
essentially what
when
you're calling a
you want to
Ponzi scheme.
get money from the bank, you must give them back something to insure it, but they don't have.
Okay.
The reason that the builders went to the stock market is not because that the banks knew that something is wrong. It's because they need more money to pay to the bank their loans, and they don't have any more money. So they went to the stock market and sell their stocks for a good price, by the way, because the kids with the ties from the insurance company bought it in a high price, okay, in a too high price. So they went to the bank to ask for more money, and the bank told them, "Listen, we can't give you any more money. Sell apartments. You have so many apartments unsold. Sell your apartment and give me back my loan."
Great.
So
Fine, play that out for
this is
us. So what happens if these apartments don't sell? Because I know that, unemployment is
you
a
want
real threat
you
with
have
AI
the
displacing a lot of jobs. Tell us about what you think will
end of
happen.
okay, it's simple. If you want to know what will happen, you got to look back what had happened in the past. This is it. You got to know history. It's the same even if in this war. If you want to know what will happen in the Israeli real estate market, look what happened in the bank stocks in the 80s. Simple as that. In the 80s, they blew up a huge bubble. It was a Ponzi scheme, by the way. The investigation, the government investigation, used these words, Ponzi scheme. They took this, by the way, in the 80s, the banks in Israel, the value of the banks in Israel was higher than the banks in the United States. Did you know that? Ah, you're laughing, huh?
Well, I'm not going to tell you what I was doing in the 80s, but no, I didn't know that.
I'm an old dude. I'm 66 years old. So if you want to know what happened, exactly what happened in the stock market, the banks are going to find themselves with 150,000 condos that they will have to, some of them they'll have to finish building, and they will have to sell a big price. And the banks will come to the government and we'll tell the government, save us, because if you won't save us, we'll collapse. Simple as that.
According to you, the banks are going to go to the government will or will not bail them out.
Will. Otherwise, it's a total collapse. What happened in the 80s with the bank stocks is that they told me, listen, you have $1 million in the bank, no problem, but you cannot touch it for 5 years. You cannot take it out for the next 5 years.
Who told who that? The bank told the consumer or the, yeah?
Yeah. This is one of that's
To avoid a crash. They froze the money basically.
yeah. And by the way, a lot of people who
So how is that the government bailing them out?
the government is bailing them out. What happened in the States? The government didn't bail the banks out. By the way, in the States, when the government bailed the banks out, you know what happened with more than half of the money? Check me. You know where did more than half of the money went to? It went to bonuses to the banks. Did you know that?
Yeah, that's I mean, I don't have an exact number either, but yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. It's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. So, by the way, yes, that's what's going to happen.
At the end of the
The
day,
80s
what's also ridiculous, I mean, it's good news is that it actually made money. The way that they structured it, the government structured it is they actually made money in the end of the day, and it didn't cost taxpayers, but a lot of people lost their houses, and that's the tragedy. So how do you
Yeah.
see the ramifications on the housing market with people who currently own? As long as they can pay their bills, they're okay.
So, if prices should go down by half to meet the value,
That's what you think? As much as half?
it won't. It will not happen. It will not happen. But if you want the prices to meet the value, they should go by half because
Oh,
each property, when you buy today for 2 million, the value is 1 million. But what will happen is somewhere above between the 25 and 30% when the prices will go down. This is the moment that the government will interfere and will say, okay, you know what happened in the stock market when the crisis shows up? They stop, they close the market,
the
right?
market. Yep.
This is exactly what's going to happen here. Okay, the government and the Ministry of Finance probably they will say, okay, 30%, this is it. We're stopping it now. These are the prices that are going to be from today to the 20 years ahead. And the banks will be able to give loans only under this price list. They will stop.
Meaning 80%, 75 to 80% financing on that price, that new adjusted price, or
That is lower.
100% financing on it. In other words, a person put 25% down and now that's gone because their down payment is essentially wiped out by the market. And now the fair market value, the fair market value on paper, at least by the banks, would be whatever the loan amount is. And you're saying the government will stop it from going below that loan amount. Otherwise, the whole thing collapses the banks. And so my question is, when you say that they'll allow it up until that point, are you saying the new adjusted value will be the full financing amount, or even there'll be another 25% of down payment necessary to cover that? What do you
In Israel, there is no such a thing, 100%.
financing?
The maximum you'll get 75.
Right.
So it
Okay,
never
so it's
happens.
like I was explaining before. It's like I was summarizing before. Okay. All right. Very interesting. So you think that there's a 25, 30% correction in the short run?
Yeah.
And once we get to that, the government will have to step in, put a stop block on that.
The banks will start shouting. By the way, there are a lot of buyers that they have difficulties in paying their mortgage today. A lot of buyers, a lot of them. So they go to the bank, and the bank tells them, "Listen, your mortgage is for 20 years. let's take it to 30 years, blah, 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 blah.
Okay,
blah.
good. Chaim, this is a great stopping point. I think next time what I'd like to hear, thoughts on maybe we can get into it is what happens as AI is displacing a lot of the jobs and the job market we see unemployment rise. People can't pay their rent. People can't pay their mortgages because even if the government steps in at that point that you just described so astutely, if people aren't able to pay their mortgages and prices, the government may have to step in again to help people not be homeless. So maybe we can cover your thoughts on that next time, in addition to our wonderful roundabout way of unpacking a lot of some of the other aspects of this bubble that you believe that we're in. And hopefully everyone will stay safe in the meanwhile, and not just listen to the real estate agents who are always telling people real estate in Israel always goes up. Hopefully, we can continue to peel the curtain back behind these wizards and expose their fallacy and get people educated and up to speed. Chaim, we thank you for your time today, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
At Tribe Journal, we tell the untold. You can find more great content like this at tribejournal.org. Thanks for being with us.